A former human rights lawyer trying to claw back BC's Indigenous rights law is proof that the mining industry can make anyone its bitch. Well, not anyone, but we'll get back to that. Just in case you aren't up to your eyeballs in BC politics right now, here's what's happening. Last December, the Kakatla First Nation proved in court that BC's crusty old Victorian-era mining law that lets anyone in the world stake a mining claim virtually anywhere in the province without having to consult with First Nations or property owners was completely at odds with BC's Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act, or DRIPA. DRIPA is a piece of legislation that lays out a roadmap to align provincial laws with the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. DRIPA was unanimously passed in 2019. Industry executives, who would rather light their Aston Martins on fire than support a law restricting their ability to exploit Indigenous lands for profit, were convinced to support DRIPA at the time because they were told it was largely symbolic, until it wasn't. Immediately after the court agreed with the Kitkatla that DRIPA has real power to reshape provincial laws around Indigenous rights, panicked mining executives and the other corporate Siths who control David Eby started calling the Premier's office. Eby immediately folds and promises to appeal the Kakatla decision, but that could take years. In the meantime, he needs a band-aid fix for those poor corporate executives' boo-boos. So Eby goes, shh, don't worry, baby. We'll amend DRIPA and remove all the parts that accidentally gave it actual teeth. Indigenous leaders say, no, you can't recognize human rights in law and then hit Control-Z. Eby, who at this point is vying for Olympic gymnastics gold with all this bending over backwards for the mining industry, says, fine, we'll suspend the important parts of DRIPA, just for 3 years until we can defeat the Kakatla in court. Until then, mines and pipelines can go ahead without legal challenges. And also, I'm making this a confidence vote, so if my MLAs don't vote in favor, it'll bring down the government and trigger an election that we'll probably lose. And this is where the mining industry finally comes up against a wall in the legislature, because 10 NDP MLAs, all women led by Joan Phillip, say they can't and they won't support this betrayal of reconciliation and Indigenous communities. So Eby is forced to walk back his plan again. Which brings us to today. David Eby still plans to introduce amendments to DRIPA, but not as a confidence vote. Since he doesn't have the support of his whole caucus, or the Greens, who have said they won't vote for any amendments, Eby now finds himself in the incredibly embarrassing position of having to court the BC Conservatives, who are using Indigenous rights as a wedge and won't settle for anything less than a full repeal of DRIPA. And all this so that billionaires like Murray Edwards can rip copper and gold out of Indigenous territories without consent and dump toxic waste behind a dam that could burst at any time. Comment at DavidEbyBC at BCNDP and tell them to stand up to the corporate Sith lords, stop dismantling the law that recognizes human rights for Indigenous people, and get back to the negotiating table like grown-ups.